Hello, is that you, Louis?
Yes, it is. Hello, Saeed.
Hello, I haven't seen you for such a long time.
I yes, man. How are you, mate?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Lovely to see you. Lovely to see you. So, because there is a festival going on in Marrakesh this very minute as we speak,
Yeah.
I'm going to introduce myself tonight. So, my name is Shane Ibbs, and I'm here to
Oh,
tell
yeah.
some stories for children from any age up to the age of about 103, 104 years of age. So, any children in that age bracket are welcome to listen to a story. You like that, Louis, did you? So,
Yeah.
before I start the stories, I just want to acknowledge what's happening in Marrakesh at the
Yeah.
moment with the third annual gathering of storytellers from around the world, including Moroccan storytellers and storytellers from all over, at the third annual festival for the World Storytelling Cafe in Morocco. And the theme is Baja, which is joy. Oh, I've got to look it up what it means. It means joy and healing stories. So let's hope I tell some joyful stories that maybe add a little bit of healing tonight. So
Okay.
there's about 80 tellers there, and they're trying to break a Guinness World Record with storytelling. I'm not going to attempt
Okay.
that tonight. I'm on here for about an hour, but they're on there. They're doing. I can't remember how many hours it is, but it's a lot of hours, like days, I think, to try and break a record. So
Oh,
fingers crossed that they managed to do that. Well, so let's begin a story. So I've got a few stories beside me, and I'm just looking at my list and I'm thinking, what story should I tell? Bearing in mind the children could be aged, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 103 or 104, but long ago, in a jungle, there was a hare. Now, hare is a bit like rabbit, but he's got big floppy ears and long legs, and he was asleep against a tree. There he was, his arms behind his head, fast asleep. When suddenly he heard a bang, and he woke up and he looked around and he wondered what the bang was. It was such a loud bang, and he thought, oh, I think the world is falling apart. I think the world is just breaking and falling apart. And he began to run, and he began to run because he was scared that he thought the world was breaking apart. And he found an antelope and he said, Antelope, the world is breaking, the world is falling apart, it's breaking. The antelope went running, running through the jungle, and he found a monkey and he said, Monkey, the world is falling apart. It's breaking. And the monkey went swinging through the trees. Swinging through the trees. And he told all his monkey friends, all the ape family, the gorillas, the world is falling apart. And all of those creatures, they went running, running and running and swinging through the trees. And they told the birds, the parrots and the birds, the beautiful birds of the jungle, the world is falling apart. And suddenly these birds went flying through the jungle, calling out to lion, to giraffe, to hippopotamus, to rhinoceros. The world is falling apart. And all these animals, birds and four-legged creatures and two-legged creatures, are running and flying and running and flying through the jungle, for they were so scared that something bad was happening in the world. Well, they ran and ran and ran, and quite soon you could hear a rumbling through the jungle. And with the birds flying, there was a huge commotion. Well, Lion, the chief lion, he was asleep. There he was, laying on some soft tuft of grass, just kind of rah, 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 rah. And he heard the noise and he woke up and he thought, who is disturbing my sleep? And he went walking down onto the main path and he saw all these animals: giraffe, lion, panther, tiger, parrots, birds of all sorts, antelopes, rabbits, I can't think of any more creatures. Elephants. You can add some creatures if you like. There's so many creatures of the jungle. I can't think of them all, but they were all running towards Lion, and Lion just stood there because he was annoyed because he'd been woken up from his sleep. And when they got very close to him, Lion put up his paw and he said, "Stop!" And all the animals went, and they put their brakes on. They all stopped, including the birds. And they looked at the lion, and the lion said, "You have woken me up. You, rhinoceros, why have you woken me up?" Lion, your Majesty, the world is falling apart. Who told you that? It was Giraffe. He told me. And Giraffe came in, and the lion said, "Giraffe, who told you the world is falling apart?" It was Tiger. He told me. The lion went over to Tiger. He said, "Tiger, who told you the world is falling apart?" And Tiger said, it was the parrot. And Lion went to the parrot. He said, "Who told you the world is falling apart?" And the parrot said, it was the monkeys. And Lion went up to the monkey and he said, "Who told you the world is falling apart?" And he said, it was Hare. Hare said it first. And the lion went walking over to Hare. "Is this true, Hare? Is the world falling apart?" "Yes," said Hare. I was having a sleep against a palm tree, and there was a bang. And I'm sure the world is falling apart. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. Right. Can you show me where this happened? Uh, yes, said Hare. Follow me. And Hare went lolloping along, as they do. Lollop, lollop, next behind Hare. And all the other creatures of the jungle and the birds and what have we, they were all walking, walking. And they got to the tree. And Hare said, "It happened here." "Oh," said Lion, and he looked around. It's happening behind the tree," said Hare. "The world is falling apart behind the tree." And Lion, he went behind the tree and he had a look. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. He went to the other side of the tree and he looked round the tree, the other side. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And he turned and he looked at Hare and he said, "Hare, what you heard was a coconut falling out the tree and going bang on the ground and splitting open. The world is not falling apart. The world is not breaking, Hare. And Hare, let me just tell you," said the wise lion, "before you start spreading a rumor, be sure to check your facts." And the hare went slinking off, very embarrassed, because he realized the world was not falling apart. And that's the end of my first story. There we are. You're looking very cozy there, Louis, I have to say. In your nice hoodie and your nice warm kind of I don't know if it's a sweatshirt you've got on
It's a
you've got
cardigan.
something very warm on.
It's a cardigan because I'm in the
Very
car.
very nice indeed. Very nice indeed. So I just have a little drink. And well, the story I'm going to tell you next comes from a different part of the world. And a friend of mine who's actually at the festival, Vero Chambers, her name is, I've named her now. She asked me about a story that she heard quite some time ago that I told. And it involves bees. And she has a teacher friend in Ireland who wants a story about bees. And Vero said, "If you get a chance, Shane, to record the story so she could hear it, would you do that?" And I thought, well, it's going to be a long time before that happens. But then they needed somebody to tell stories tonight. And I thought, I'll tell that story tonight. So the story comes from Ireland, that beautiful green land, not so far away from England. Long ago, there was a beekeeper, a young man. He was a handsome man. They often are in stories, but he was a handsome man, and he was a nice, kind man. But he didn't have a wife. In fact, he didn't live with anybody other than his bees. He loved his bees, and he loved his garden. And he would spend all day in the garden, tending the flowers, looking after the grass, tending to the trees and the blossom and what have we on the trees, or picking the fruit if it was autumn. He would look after that garden, and there were vegetables and fruit and beautiful flowers. But he also had several beehives with bees in them. And the bees would come out in the spring and the summer, and they would pollinate all the flowers and the blossom in the spring particularly, and they would gather their pollen and they would make honey. And these bees were the happiest bees that you ever did hear. When you heard them buzz, it was kind of a warm, fuzzy, buzzy sound. They were so happy. And in the evenings, he would go down there where the beehives were. He would sit on his little log and he would talk to the beehives. He would talk to the bees in the beehives. He would chat away to them. He would tell them all sorts of things. And the bees would just as they listened to him. Well, there he was one day talking to the bees, and he heard dogs barking. And he heard horses galloping. And quite soon, a hare came running into his garden. Another hare story. A hare came running into his garden, jumped up in his arms, and he held it. And the hare was shivering and shaking, not from cold, it was scared. For these dogs and the hunters on their horses were chasing the hare. And the hare was absolutely petrified. And he held the hare close to him to keep it safe. And the hunters, they came on their horses, and the dogs around his gate and his back wall. And he said, "Yes, what do you want?" And they said, "Have you got a hare?" And he said, "I have a hare, but it's none of your business." They said, "We were chasing that hare. We wanted to kill that hare. It's our hare. We want it." And he said, "The hare is in my garden. I am protecting it. It is now my hare." And the men on their horses and the dogs had to turn around and disappear. Well, he looked at this sweet, sweet hare, and then, well, he noticed something very unusual about the hare. It was a hare in the normal way that a hare is, with their big floppy ears and their long legs and whatever, and their long body, but it had eyes that were the most beautiful green. And he'd never seen a hare with green eyes before. It was so beautiful. Well, he took it inside that evening, and he got a little box, and he put some straw in it, and he laid the hare in there, and that's where the hare slept that night. The following morning, he got a little bit of vegetation from his garden to feed it and some water. And, well, the hare lived with him. Day after day, the hare would follow him, lollop around, and he would follow him wherever he went, wherever the beekeeper went. The hare would go with him. Whatever he did, working in the garden, cooking something to eat, getting some water out of the well, the hare would be with him all the time. And he stayed with him for days and days and weeks and weeks. And people would come past, and they noticed that he had a hare, a pet hare. And the young women would come along, and, well, they thought he would make a really good husband, and they would try and chat him up and talk to him and kind of wink and try and get his eye, but he was not interested. He just loved his garden, his bees, and now the hare. While the days and the weeks and the months passed, and one day he was in the garden working away, and the hare suddenly ran and jumped into his gardens like the first time he'd met it. And the hare once again was shivering and shaking with fear. And he tucked it into his jacket, and he wondered why it was so scared. And it was just shaking inside his jacket, shaking and shaking. It was so scared. And then he heard his gate click, and he looked, and there was an old woman dressed in black, with a tall black hat and a long crooked nose and a big wart on her chin, and nearly as many hairs on her chin as I've got in my chin. And she said, "I'll buy the hare from you." And he said, "The hare is not for sale. I'll give you £5. And long, long ago, £5 was worth, well, hundreds of pounds. She said, "I'll give you £5 for your hair." He said, "The hair is not for sale. I'll give you £10, she said, for your hair. The hair is not for sale. And no matter how much she offered him, he refused to sell it to her. And she looked at him and she, "Wah, a curse on you," she said. And with that, she was gone. Well, you may have worked out, Louis, that that was no ordinary woman. That woman was a witch. Now, there's good witches and there's not such good witches. And she was not one of the good witches. She was one of those mean witches. And he knew this was a bad sign. And the hare was just so afraid. And he said, "I will protect you and look after you. You have nothing to fear," he said. "I will protect you." Well, they went in the house and they spent the evening there. And the next day he was back in the garden. And it's the same kind of thing again. Just looking after the flowers. And the hare was sunning himself. And the bees were just flying around the garden. It's just a flower to flower to flower to flower. Back in the hive again to feed the young. And flower to flower to flower. And there they were, and then they heard the clip-clop of a horse and the wheels of a carriage or a wagon or something. And sure enough, there was a gypsy wagon coming past. And he waved to them because he knew the gypsy family that lived down the lane. They would often stay there overnight, and what have we? He knew them well, and he knew they were good people, and he waved to them, and the man looking after riding the horse waved back. As it went past, there was a big bale of hay on the back of the wagon, and it fell off. And because hay is so soft and quiet, they didn't hear it fall. It just carried on down the road to their little place where they would stay down the country lane. Sweet little place. And he saw the hay and he thought, oh, I must give them the hay. Well, he tucked the hare in his jacket like he did, carrying it, and he went and got the hay, and he walked down the lane a mile or two, and he came to where the wagon had set itself up. There was a little fire going, and whatever, a cup of tea was being made, a kettle was on. And he said, "Oh, man there," he said, "is your hay?" "Oh, thank you, sir." He said, "Thank you, it's very kind of you." And he took the hay and he said, "What's that you got in your jacket there?" He said, "Oh, it's a hare," he said. He said, "Oh, let's have a look at the hare." Showed him the hare. And the gypsy man said, "Oh, look at his eyes." "I know," said the man. "It's unusual, isn't it?" "Oh." He said, "Can I get my mother to look at this?" "Yeah, yes, yes." He said, Mother, come and have a look." And the gypsy man's mother came and she had a look at the hare and she could see the green of its eyes. She said, "That's no ordinary hare. That is a bewitched hare. A witch will be after the hare. Make sure she doesn't get him. Get her, the hare. It's a female hare. Make sure she doesn't get her. In fact, on Midsummer's Eve, that is when she will come, because that's when witches are about. One of the times they're about, Halloween as well, but there's also midsummer things happen. What you need to do is you need to be on a horse with your hare, and you must ride up and down this country lane, up and down and up and down and up and down, and you must not be still. You must keep moving and moving and moving and protect that hare from the witch. And he said, "But thank you, I will do that." And off he went. Well, it wasn't long before midsummer came. The eve of midsummer, that longest day. I mean, it's a long way away from us at the moment in the middle of our winter, but midsummer will come eventually once again in June. The longest day of brightness and sunshine. And he got his horse ready. He tucked the hare in his coat. He got on the horse and he began to ride up and down and up and down and up and down. And of course, eventually it became dark, because even on the longest day, eventually darkness does come. The moon was up. And suddenly the hare began to shiver and shiver and shiver. And he knew she was there somewhere. But he just kept riding up and down on his horse to protect the hare. The next thing, he couldn't believe it. The next thing he heard was bees. His bees. Hundreds, thousands of them. All the bees had left the nests. He had several nests of bees, several hives of bees. They'd all left, and a big swarm, like a big black cloud of bees, just went across and across the fields. And he wondered what on earth the bees were doing, because the bees never got up late at night when it was dark. They would be in their hive there. He thought, whatever is happening? And the next thing he heard were men calling for him. "John, John, come, John. John, quickly, you must come. You must come, John. He went riding across the field to look. And what he saw was the bees, thousands of them, chasing a woman who was dressed in a long black dress, with a long black pointy hat, a crooked nose, and a big old wart on her hairy chin. She was running and running and running away from these bees because these bees were going to sting her. She ran so far that she was never seen again. And the next thing that happened was this hare jumped out of his jacket. As soon as its feet touched the ground, there was someone with green eyes. But it was no longer a hare. It was a woman with beautiful red hair and green eyes. And as soon as he saw her, he knew she was a good soul, a good woman. And he said, "You are the woman that I've been waiting for. Will you marry me?" Well, of course, the woman who had been the bewitched hare had lived with him for so long as a hare, she knew what a good man he was, and she agreed to marry him. And they spent their days in that garden, looking after the flowers and the plants and the trees and the bees. And they lived a long and happy life. And that's the story of the beekeeper and the hare. Thank you. So I'm just having a drink of lemon and lime squash. I recommended it. It's very nice. So I can only imagine what my colleagues, I have many friends who are in Marrakesh at this very moment as part of the World Storytelling Cafe's collaboration with the storytellers of Marrakesh. There'll be several of my friends there telling stories and eating wonderful Moroccan food. I went to the first storytelling festival there, the beautiful food, the wonderful people, the wonderful music, the bright colors everywhere, the noise, the music, just it's a wonderful city to go to, very vibrant place. And they'll be doing, well, whatever they're doing, enjoying themselves and listening to stories a bit like you are tonight. So I thought I might tell you a story, a winter story. And it's a winter story that I don't get to tell very often. So I hope I remember it. But it comes from Canada long ago, when tribal people, indigenous people, walked the lands, Native Americans, Native Canadians. And he was a hunter, this man, and he was out in winter. And winter was coming quite close to an end, but there was still snow everywhere, deep, thick snow. And he was out with a bow and arrow on his snow. He was walking in his snowshoes, his special snowshoes, and he had a bow and arrow, and he was hunting for something to eat to take back to his family because he had a wife and children. And this was the day when the sun had come out. You know, you get those sunny days where we get the sun that comes out. It's a beautiful day, but the sun was a little bit stronger than it had been. And it was just beginning to melt the snow a little bit. And suddenly there was a thump, blub, and a lump of snow fell off the tree. And there was another flump and lump and blump. There's some more snow fell off the tree. And the hunter laughed. Snow. The sun has got you. The sun is more powerful than you. It is time for you to go, Snow. And suddenly the hunter heard a voice. "Ho, do not mock me. I come here from the north. The father of the north winds sends me here, the snow. I come here every year. And yes, it's my time to go nearly, but you have mocked me. I will come back next winter for you, and you will have to prove your worth, for I will enter a duel with you." And the hunter heard this, and he couldn't see the man of snow anywhere, but he knew this was serious. And he went back to his lodge, to his wife and his children, and he told his wife, he said, the man of snow. I laughed at him, and he said he will come back next winter, and that he will enter a duel with me. I have to fight with him, and I don't know what that means. And his wife said, you need to see the elders, the chief and the elders. They will know. And off he went to the hut where the chief and the elders talked about all manner of things, the wisest people in their little village. And he knocked on the side of their lodge. Come in. And all the men were sitting down around a fire. Take a seat, they said. How can we help? And he said, I was out there hunting, and I laughed at the snow because it was melting. The sun is melting the snow. Spring is nearly here, and I laughed. And he said he would come back to challenge me. And I don't know what that means. Oh, you have insulted the snow. The north, the North Father, the Father of the North, he sends the snow every winter. You know this, and you have insulted the snow. The snow will come back for you. So you have to leave this village. You will have to build yourself a lodge just for you, away from us. You will have to leave your wife and children for a year and build a lodge and be ready for next winter. Oh, thank you, he said. The hunter went back to his wife with a heavy heart. He said, my wife, my children, I have to leave you for 1 year. I have to go find somewhere, and I have to build myself a lodge and get enough food for myself and enough wood to keep me warm and enough skins for blankets and enough skins to wear to keep me warm, and I will be gone for a year. And his wife said, begin the work and I will weave you something. So he began the work, and she wove him a beautiful rug to hang over his door to keep the windy drafts out. She said, take this with you. And she hugged him and kissed him, and the children hugged and kissed him. And that was the last he saw them for a year. And off he went. And through the spring, he had to cut down trees. He had to drag the wood himself, and he had to begin to build a wooden lodge. He put a roof on it. Then he began to gather big stones, and he built himself a fire hearth in the middle of the lodge. He made pitch pine to glue up all the holes where the logs fitted together, to pack it full of pitch pine to seal out any drafts. He had to hunt buffalo and all manner of animals, deer, etc. He had to drag the animals back, cut all the meat off, cut the skin off, cut all the meat off, cut the fat, drag the fat off the skins, and keep all the fat for tallow to make candles from the animal fat, which is what they did years ago. The skins were for blankets to keep him warm. The meat he stored, some he salted and dried and what have we. And then he had to cut logs for the fire. Well, this work went on for days and weeks and months and months and months. It's all he spent his time doing. And soon, when winter was just about to come, it was ready. And he went into the hut, and he closed that door, and he put that beautiful woven rug that his wife had given him across the door to keep the draft out. And he sat there all alone, just looking into the fire. And then he noticed that it was getting a little bit colder. Oh, it is cold, he thought. Ooh. So he got himself a thicker jacket of animal skin, and he put it on. I'm going to sneeze, I think. Am I going to sneeze? No, I'm not going to sneeze. Sorry. It's the cold that's coming in that's making me want to sneeze. He put an animal skin jacket on, and he was still a bit cold, and he put another log on the fire to get himself a little bit warmer, and he began to stamp his feet a little bit because they were cold. Oh, it is cold. Winter is surely here. But he didn't dare look outside because the man of snow was coming. Well, it got colder and colder, and he had to put another one of his skin coats on that he had, and a blanket. But it was so cold, and he put another log on the fire. Oh, it was so cold, so cold. And then he lay down to sleep. He woke up in the middle of the night and he could hear the rattling of the trees as the cold wind. The winter wind was bringing all that cold from the north, the ice, the snow, the coldness was coming closer and closer. And he shuffled himself up in that blanket to get himself a little bit warmer, and he put another log on the fire and he fell back to sleep. And he woke again a few hours later, even colder, and he could hear and he saw what looked like a mist come underneath the door, come into the room. Cold, cold mist. It went all the way around the hut. And the next thing he saw, on a log sitting opposite him, was a man of snow, completely snow. And he just looked at the hunter. And the man of snow had these icy blue eyes. And he just looked at the hunter. And when he breathed, all you could see was this cold, cold mist would come out of his mouth. The hunter was so cold. It was so cold. And he looked at the man of snow and he didn't know what to do. And the man of snow just looked at him. He didn't say a word. He just looked and breathed cold. The hunter got another log. He put some more logs on the fire. And it wasn't long before the man of snow made a sound, and it was a kind of groan. The hunter thought, I have him. And he put some more logs on the fire to get more heat in the hut. And the man of snow once again was, please don't put any more logs on the fire, said the man of snow. And the hunter thought, I have him. I have him. And he got the rest of the pine pitch that he had, this black sticky stuff that's really flammable. And he poured that onto the fire. And quite soon there was a blazing fire in the hut. And the man of snow was, and he began to shrink. Please stop with the fire. And he began to get smaller and smaller as he began to melt. There was a big puddle on the floor, the heat in the hut. Well, the hunter got as many bits of wood as the last of the wood, the last of the pine pitch. He just put it all on the fire. And the man of snow said, you have beaten me. You have beaten me. Now he was just a tiny little, like a little snowball left on the log. It's all that was left of the man of snow. You have beaten me, hunter. You have beaten me. It is time for me to go back to farther north from where I come. You have beaten me. And in future, I promise you, your wife and your children can walk barefoot in the snow and they will always be safe. And with that, the man of snow was no more. And the hunter thought, spring must be here. Surely it doesn't feel so cold. And he thought, dare I look? And he thought, I'm sure I can hear birds. I'm sure it's spring. And he lifted up the rug that his wife had made for him, and he looked and opened the door and he looked out, and there was green grass and the first of the spring flowers. Spring had returned. And the hunter went back to his wife and his children in the knowledge that he had beaten the man of snow and that his family would always be safe in the winter. And that's the story of the man of snow and the hunter. Oh, thank you, Louis. That's very kind of you. Very kind of you to clap. So I'm going to put my glasses on and just check the time. I need to just see where we are time-wise. Okay, we've still got some time left. So let's just wet my whistle, as they say, just have another little drink of squash. Mm. So I'm just looking at my list of stories. I've got a list of stories right beside. I'm just looking at all the titles. I'm thinking, I wonder what story I will tell you. And I think we'll move to another part of the world, a warmer part of the world, a part where there's well, the landscape kind of goes from sand to less sand, but warmth. Just somewhere warm. Just think of somewhere warm. Basically, is where we're going to go. And there was a merchant, and a merchant is a person who buys and sells things. It could be gold. It could be spices. It could be. I wonder what you think it could be, Louis. What other sort of things do you think he would sell? What would you say? See if I can hear you.
Clothes.
Pardon? Do you know? I'm not sure I've got my volume up fully.
Clothes.
Let me just turn my volume up. I've got a feeling I haven't got my volume full. I haven't. Just let me turn my volume up. Could you repeat what you said, Louis?
Clothes.
Clothes. Yes. He would have the finest silk clothes. He would have the most beautiful jackets, oh, that you ever did see. He would have fine, exquisite rugs that had been woven by people. He just had all manner of things that people wanted, basically. And he would take them and he would travel from place to place and sell them and make money and make more money than he paid for them. And he was a rich man. Now, this merchant, the house he lived in was a big, grand house. And in this house, his favorite room, there was a golden cage. And in the golden cage was a golden bird. Now, the merchant was not married and he didn't have children. And his best friend was the golden bird. For in this story, the golden bird could speak. And not only could the golden bird speak, the golden bird could tell stories. So whenever the merchant came back from a day's work, he would sit there and he'd have his evening meal. He'd give something to the bird to eat in the cage, and he'd maybe drink a glass of wine or something, and he would chat to the bird, and he would ask the bird to tell him a story. And the bird would tell him a story. And they would chat about this, they would chat about that, all manner of things. Now, sometimes the merchant had to travel far, far away to do his business. So there was money to be made far away with all the good things that he had to sell. And whenever he had to go, he always left the golden bird locked in the cage. In fact, he never let the bird out of the cage, whether he was at home or whether he went away. He never let the bird out of the cage. It was always locked with a golden key. And the bird knew that the merchant was about to go away once again. And the golden bird said, "Please, master, please take me with you. I get so lonely when you're gone. I know you have one of the servants to look after me, to feed me and give me water and keep me clean, my cage clean." He said, "But I don't chat to them and I miss you so much. Please take me with you." And the merchant looked at the bird and said, "Oh, no, 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 no," he said. You are the only golden bird that there is. If I took you with me and took you out of that cage, someone could steal you. You could fly off, and I would not have you my best friend ever again. You have to stay always in the cage. It's for your own protection and safety," said the merchant. "Please, please," said the golden bird, "please take me with you. I hate it when you're away. I feel so lonely. Please take me with you." "No, no, 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 no. It's not going to happen," said the merchant. "I'm very sorry." He said, I've got to be away for several weeks now." He said, "You'll be fine. You'll be fed and watered. You'll be fine." And the golden bird realized that the merchant was not going to take them. And the golden bird said to the master, "Could you do one thing for me?" Of course I can," said the master. "Name it. What is it?" And the golden bird said, "There is another bird just like me. Could you tell it that I exist?" There's not another bird like you. There is no way there's another golden bird as beautiful as you. There is. I don't believe that. There is, said the bird. Would you pass the message on? Well, well, I will, but the merchant thought, well, I'm never going to see another bird like this. This is the one and only golden bird. Where do I find this bird, anyway? And the golden bird said, when you leave the last city that you visit, keep going west. Keep going and going and going. And you will come to the sea. And when you come to the sea, turn left and walk along the beach. And there will be a tree that is taller than all the other trees. It will stand way above all the other trees. On the bottom branch, you will see a golden bird just like me. And the merchant said, okay. And the merchant thought, oh, there's not another bird. Anyway, the merchant got his donkeys packed with his goods and wares. He always took a few men with him to help him with a few more donkeys. They had like a little train of donkeys, as it's known as. And off they went, clip, clop, clip, clop. And they went from city to city to city. And he would sell those rugs, those beautiful clothes, Louis. I mean, if you had seen the jackets and shirts that they had, you would have wanted some of them. I know you. You're a smart man. I know you would have wanted some of those smart clothes. And they had gold. You could have had gold bracelets, gold rings, gold net. I mean, just all the beautiful things, spices for your food. And he sold everywhere he went. He sold well, and he bought cheaply, and he sold for much more than he bought them for. And he made himself a lot of money. And when he got to the last city, he remembered. He thought, well, I better just check for the golden bird. He said, I'm wasting my time, but I did promise him, and he is my best friend. So he thanked the men that were with him, and he paid them. And he said, please go back. He said, I'll be back in a day or two. I have a message to give to somebody. And off the men went. And the merchant on his donkey just carried on and on and on. And he came to the sea, beautiful sea, golden sands, gorgeous sands. And he turned left and he went along the sands. And he went a few miles along the sands. And sure enough, there was one tree that was much, much, much taller than all the other trees. And he thought, that's the tree that the golden bird described. And he went up to the tree, and on the bottom branch, there was a golden bird. And it looked just like his golden bird. In fact, he thought it was his golden bird, but it was another golden bird. Hello, he said. And the golden bird said, hello. And the merchant said, I have a message for you. Oh, what's the message? Said the golden bird. And the merchant said, in my home, there is another golden bird in a cage that is just like you, and I keep it under lock and key in a cage. And with that, the golden bird fell off the branch onto the sand, dead. Or so he thought. He took the bird that he thought was dead. He dug a hole in the sand. He put the bird in. He covered it with sand, got on his donkey, and began his journey all the way back home, which would take him a few days. Well, when the merchant, was out of sight with the donkey, the sand began to move, and the bird got out of the sand. It was still alive. It had pretended to be dead. While the merchant took several days riding back, he eventually got back to his house, his huge mansion of a house. He couldn't wait to see his bird. He couldn't wait. And he got up into the room and he said, oh, bird, bird, bird. Oh, I'm so glad to see you. I'm so glad to see you. It's so good to be back home. You can tell me more stories. And the golden bird said to him, did you pass the message on? Yes, I did. I passed the message on. And what did the bird say? Oh, oh, I'm sorry to tell you that the bird dropped off the branch dead. And with that, the merchant's golden bird in the cage fell off its perch, dead. But the bird was pretending it was dead. But the merchant was sure the bird was dead. It wasn't breathing because it was holding its breath. And he picked that bird up and oh, what have I done to you? What have I done to you? You're my best friend. You're the only friend I have. And, and I've caused your death. And he sobbed and sobbed. He said, what have I done? What have I done to my golden friend? And he went across to the window and he opened the window and he put the bird on the ledge. He thought, you poor thing. I don't know what to do. It's all my fault. And the merchant turned, get himself a glass of water. He was so upset. And he heard a flapping of wings and he turned and the golden bird was up and flying around and out of the window it went. It's still alive, he said. And he went across to the window and he said, bird, bird, come back, please. Come back, come back. I'll put you back in the cage. Come back. And the golden bird flew around and said, I will no longer live in a cage. I am meant to be free. I am a bird and I am going to fly and find my friend. And that's what that golden bird did. That golden bird flew and flew and flew and found his friend, the other golden bird. And as far as I know, those two golden birds are still somewhere in a beautiful wood looking at the sea. Thank you. Ah, thank you, Louis. Now, I'm just doing something on my computer before. So, um, so there's probably time. I can just about see the time. There's probably time for another story, but that's if you want another story, Louis. And whoever might be listening online, hopefully there'll be a few people listening online. So let's have a think of what other story that I might tell you. Well, we are at winter still, and I know we've had Christmas, but winter still goes on for quite some time, depending on what part of the world you're in. And the part of the world that I live in, the winter goes on for a bit yet. And in the northern lands, think of Lapland, that part of the world, the very north, where it's winter lasts for a very long time, and the snow is deep and crisp and even, and it's cold, so cold that the trees get wrapped in ice sometimes, and sometimes you can hear them crack as the ice kind of cracks the bark or the wood in the tree. There's very few animals around because everywhere's covered in snow. Food is hard to find. And the reindeer, well, now there's a thing. You see, everyone believes that it's the men reindeers that have the antlers. And they do, they have their antlers. But in the winter, they drop their antlers. And it's the females that keep their antlers. The females still have their antlers. And now they need those antlers to be able to rummage around in the snow to get the snow all out of the way, to keep the male reindeers out of the way so the mothers can eat whatever they find, the moss and what have we, the vegetation. And they keep the male deer away because the male deers haven't got any antlers to kind of to wrestle with them. And there was one winter long ago when the sun had disappeared and there was just no sun. And it was so cold, and the animals, most of the animals couldn't get food, and they were beginning to starve, and they were getting so cold, and they needed the sun back, and the sun had not come back this time, and they knew it was a problem. And they all gathered, the animals, and Bear, who's kind of like he's normally in charge, they all went to Bear, and they said, the winter fox, the white fox, went to Bear and said, Bear, you are powerful and big. What are we going to do? We need the sun back because we are starving. And the bear said, oh, I'm not sure I know what to do. Well, you need to go, Bear, and bring the sun back. Oh, the sun lives so far away. There's no way I could go, and I would not be able to get that far. I might be big and powerful, but there's no way I could travel so far to bring the sun back. And he said, well, Fox, why don't you go? You're stealthy and quick. And the fox said, it is too far for me to go. And the winter birds, the geese and what have you. And they said it's too far for us to fly. And the animals were talking to each other, and they didn't know what to do. And then the mother deer, reindeer, she heard them, and she came walking through the creatures, and she said, "I will go." "Well, how will you carry the sun?" She said, "I have a fine set of antlers. I will carry the sun in my antlers, and I will bring the sun back for you. But it's such a long way." "I know," she said, "but us reindeer, we can walk for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles." "Look after my children," she said, and off she went. And the reindeer crossed that frozen landscape, crossed a frozen lake with thick, thick ice and thick, thick snow. And there were pine trees everywhere, hung with snow. It looked like icing everywhere. It looked like a wedding cake almost. And the sky was pinky blue. And on she walked, on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And she started to become exhausted because there was nothing to eat. No matter what she did, it was so frozen she could not get to anything to eat, no moss to eat or anything. She was exhausted and hungry, and she collapsed on the snow, unable to go any further. And then she heard a crunching of branches or something, and or snapping a branch, and she turned and looked, and there was an old man came out of the wood. He had a long white beard. He had long white hair. He had a hat that was green and white. He had a coat that was green with white all the way around the collar and around the cuff, and he had green trousers and big thick boots on. And he came across, and he said to the reindeer, "You look as if you need help." "I do," she said. "I am exhausted and hungry, and I have to go and bring the sun back to melt the snow, and I can't go on. I am so exhausted." He said, "I have the very thing that you need." And out of a little leather pouch that he had, he brought out some mushrooms. And he said, "You need to eat these. These will give you energy, and they will enable you to fly." "To fly," she said. "These will make you fly." Well, she nibbled and ate up all these beautiful mushrooms, and she felt so much more energy, and she felt a tingling in her hooves. She said, "I feel as if I could fly." And she just kind of did a little spring in the air, and sure enough, she could fly. A mother reindeer could fly. "Thank you," she said. And she went flying across the sky. This reindeer, this mother reindeer with a big set of antlers, she flew and flew, and she had a renewed energy, and she flew and flew and flew and flew and flew beyond the hills, beyond the mountains, to the place where the sun was asleep. And she found the sun, and she said, "Sun, wake up, wake up." And the sun, "Oh, I'm so tired," said the sun. She said, "You need to come back. You are late. You need to come back and melt all the snow and all the ice." "Oh, I think I'm too tired for that. I haven't got the energy yet to come back." "I'll carry you," she said. "But I am large," said the sun, "and hot. I have these antlers, and I will carry you in my antlers," she said. And she bent down and she picked that sun up. And I want you to imagine this mother reindeer with these antlers with a big ball of sun. And she took off into the sky, and she went up, and she went across and across and across to the place where all the animals and creatures lived. And she put that sun right up in the sky. And she placed the sun in the sky, and she came back down, and the sun shone and shone and shone, and it melted all the ice and all the snow. And now the shoots of spring came, and all the animals and creatures could now eat. And do you know, Louis, and those who are listening, every year when the sun disappears from the far north lands in its freezing cold, Mother Reindeer, when the time is right, has to go and bring the sun back to bring spring. And that's the story of Mother Reindeer. And that's my last story for this evening. Thank you very much, Louis. And I know my friend Janet is listening. Thank you very much, Janet. And whoever is out there in the ether, hello, Janet. Whoever is out there on Facebook or wherever you're listening or on catch up at another time, have a wonderful rest of the rest of the winter, I guess, if you live in the northern lands. And let's look forward to spring. And let's wish all our colleagues in Marrakesh for this week a good festival. And let's hope that there is joy and healing for all of us, for we really need some healing this year. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll say good evening to you all. Thank you.
You saying?
And you, Louis,
Bye.
you're growing, Louis. You're a big lad.
I am.
How old are you now?
I'm 17, but
Wow.
in next month I'll be 18.
Whoa, 18, a man, eh? Whoa.
Lovely. Well done.
Oh,
Bye
good to
bye,
see you,
everyone.
Janet.
Bye
Yeah,
bye.
thank you, Janet. Good. Thanks for coming. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye, Louis. Bye.
Bye, Janet.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you very much. And thank you, World Storytelling Cafe, for hosting as well. I'm not sure who's doing the all the internet stuff, but thank you very much for hosting it this evening. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's okay. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Louis.